Hello, everyone. My name is Iris Schepers. I'm a PhD student from the Netherlands at the University of Groningen at the law faculty. And today I will be telling you about our project predicting citations in Dutch case law with natural language processing. I'm working on this together with Masha Medvedeva, Michelle Bruin, Martijn Wieling, and Michel Vos. This is a project that is in progress, that is being adapted from my master's thesis. So I'll be telling you about the process that we have went through and what is currently happening. This project is, this research is part of a larger project, namely the European Research Council project EVICT. This is an interdisciplinary research project in which we, with a whole group of researchers, combine traditional legal research methods with data science. And we aim to determine the actual definition of the right to housing and find the impact of the international right to housing in national eviction litigation. More information about how this all fits together can be found on our website. So why do we want to predict citations? In the current age, with the rise of the internet, data is becoming more available to everyone than ever before. And with the ever-growing accessibility of case law online, it becomes challenging to identify case law that is relevant to your own legal issue. So an example of a country this is happening in is the Netherlands. Between 2016 and 2020, the percentage of published judgments has doubled from 3.5% in 2016 to 7.2% in 2020, which currently amounts to over 38,000 decisions a year, ranging from lower level courts to higher level courts, such as the Supreme Court. And the ambition of the Council for the Judiciary is to, in the future, implement a system in which 75% of all cases are published. And it is likely that this will lead to problems regarding the searchability of the data. And thus measures should be taken to make sure that we are not overwhelmed by this new gigantic stream of data. Our goals with this current project are twofold. With the amount of incoming citations can be seen as a sort of measure of the importance of a decision. So in predicting the amount of incoming citations, in a sense, you can also determine the importance of a case when it's just published. So with this prediction, a case can be recommended to when it's not even known to the public yet. So with this prediction, we can implement a type of filter that will help make the huge amount of data more easily searchable, and help legal practitioners save time and money by being able to more quickly find important case law that is relevant to their own case. And the second goal is to gain insights into why a case is likely to be important. So by extracting the most informative features from our models, we can show that what an algorithm deems important, and then further analyze these features to see if there are any new things that we should maybe pay attention to, and see if it holds up to what legal professionals think of is important. Our data set consists of Dutch case law. It is available online for public reuse. And our first data set is the open data from the judiciary, which is a monthly updated database which contains an XML file for each published decision. Not all decisions are available to the public. A lot are only available in the internal archives of the judiciary itself. There are about 2.8 million files, of which about 600,000 contain the text of a decision. The files also contain some metadata, like the location of a case or the date that a decision was made. Then, in order to get to the citations, we use Lido data, which is linked data override, which is linked data of the government, which is an RDF file that contains all of the links between all of the governmental pages, including links between case law. These links are extracted by a sophisticated algorithm. There may be some small shortcomings, but in general, it works very well. This is this Lido is a data dump, which is up to date until May 2019, which is right after the initial research started. The Dutch legal system in general consists of 3 levels. There are 11 courts of first instance, 4 courts of appeal, and 1 Supreme Court. We decided to compare the highest and the lowest courts. As citations can keep coming in forever, we had to select set timeframes to predict the amount of citations for. So we chose 1 year and 5 years. So for 1 year, we trained on data from before 2017 and tested on data from after 2017. And did the same with 2013 for the 5-year experiment. We tried 2 different types of experiments. So a binary experiment in which we try to predict whether a case, yes, it's cited, or no, it's not cited, with labels 0 and 1. And a regression experiment in which we try to predict the actual number of citations. We only did the regression experiments for the Supreme Court, as there's not very much variety between the amount of citations for the courts of first instance, most between about 0 and 5, which we thought would not make for a very interesting regression experiment at the moment. These are the distributions for our binary classification experiments. We balanced our labels as we wanted to eliminate any effects from the majority groups. And for each test set, there is a development set of exactly the same size and distributions. So these sets are quite a step down from the 600,000 total that I mentioned previously, but we wanted to balance our labels to eliminate the majority class, which in some cases was much larger than the other set. And the distributions between train and test are not the standard 2080 or 1090 type of distribution, but we kept it this way because we want to keep our split points in years the same across experiments for now. This is the distribution for the regression experiment. For this experiment, we could not balance labels, so they were randomly distributed across all of the sets. So from the text of each XML file, so for each published decision, we extracted a number of separate features. One of the feature sets we have taken is the entire text of the decision. Then almost every decision is accompanied by a summary, and it's located at the top of a file, so we could easily extract it. For some of the files, the outgoing references are collected in a meta tag as well. They contain any outgoing references to either law or case law, but in reality, outgoing references to case law are basically never there. We also transformed this feature of references into a numerical feature to compare if there are specific references that are more informative, or if just the sheer number of references is what is important. We looked at the law areas, whether cases in criminal, administrative law, civil law, etc. Procedure type contains information about the type of case that is being decided on. So if it's a cassation case, and sometimes information about if the case was judged by one judge or a panel of judges, and more information like that. And we finally looked at the location of the court. We only did this for the courts of first instance, as there's only one Supreme Court, and this would always be the same. We expect this not to matter, but we still want to check if there's some explanatory power to this feature that shouldn't be there, maybe. So our method, we used a support vector machine for binary experiments and linear regression for the regression experiments. Our baseline models, we used the default untweaked algorithms and just fed the entire XML text file raw to the algorithm. We tried two different types of pre-processing. We tried stemming, so removing any affixes from words and removing punctuation, but they did not affect performance very much, so we decided to leave it out for now. We tried to find the best feature representation for larger textual features. So the text of decisions, the summaries, and the references. We did this by a TF-IDF factorizer. And we compared both a default TF-IDF factorizer and optimized it by means of a grid search. We also tried two types of word embeddings for now, which are referred to in further slides as WE1 and WE2. And we tried any combination of these representations. For future selection, we performed forward feature selection. So we took all of the individual features and then added them. Once we find the best feature representation, we add them together one by one in order of best individual performance. And then went ahead with the best possible combination. For the binary experiment, we also experimented with the C parameter and tried 5 different values of 0.01, 0.1, 1, 10, and 100. This is what our final models look like after all of this experimenting. Judgments in this case means the entire text of the decision, and it was in most cases the best performing individual feature. There appears to be not really a cohesion between all of the best features, except that the verdict and the summary were usually the top 2 feature sets, which was to be expected as they are the largest sets of features. Text of references is more informative than the number of references in the first row, but in the third row, the number is more indicative. In the first row, the default TF-IDF factorizer is actually performing better than the grid searched TF-IDF, which is possible because the grid search is optimized with cross-validation on the training data and then afterwards tested on the development data. And notable is in the second row, the Supreme Court 2017 experiment. The summary performed better than the entire decision and all of the other features actually. So our final models for the regression model. Again, we used the text of the decisions were the best performing feature sets, and the addition of the summaries did improve the results of the 2017 experiment, but not 2013. And again, the number of references outperformed the text of the references. So these are our results for binary classification. So predicting whether a case is cited or not. We compare the scores of the model on the development set to the baseline on the test set and the final model on the test set. We see that the scores between development and test set do not change much, but they are quite high. Our baseline is already right in almost 3/4 of the time. It is nice that there is not much deviation because it means that we did not overfit on our training data. So for the Supreme Court, we get the right answer in about 3/4 of the time. For the court of first instance, we get the right answers in about 2/3 of the time. We do not outperform our baseline by a lot, but it was already high to begin with. And in the fourth row, the court of first instance 2017, we do actually see a large improvement from the baseline, but we will have to look into why this specific test improved so much. When looking at the most informative features, most of the time the features are very specific to a certain case and contain very specific phrases, as the sets are quite small sometimes. There was one experiment in which we thought the features made sense, which was Supreme Court 2017 set. On the left, we see the most informative features for cases not being cited, and they are mostly referring to RO 80 and 81, which are specific procedural articles that the Supreme Court uses to decide on a case very quickly without having to motivate their decision. So it would make sense that they are not cited very often. On the other side, we see the most informative features for cases being cited, and they are very general and not really informative to us at all. They are mostly Dutch stop words like that and if, and also the phrase Supreme Court, which, well, of course, it is present in cases from the Supreme Court. These are the results for our regression. We do see a clear improvement from the baseline and the final to the final models. In the RMSE, the root mean squared error, we wish to be as close to 0 as possible. And we see that both final models made improvements here. And we also see this in the R2 score, which we want to be as close to 1 as possible. It is still not a very accurate system, but it is a large improvement from the negative scores in the baseline system. We also see this result when we plot our predictions. The systems are not very accurate, but the general direction of the line is going the correct way. Concluding, the size of our data sets makes it hard currently to draw any definitive conclusions, but we do see promising improvements from the baseline systems, especially in the regression system. They might not be trustworthy enough yet to be implemented, but we already have 75% accuracy in one of the systems, which is a good step in the right direction, we feel like. In the most informative features of the Supreme Court, we have seen a promising sign that the system is going to be able to catch at least features that show that a case is not going to be cited, which is also usable information. With more data, we hope to be able to improve our systems even more and hopefully contribute to the searchability of case law in the future. So in our future work, I have been in contact with the owner of the Lido data, and we have obtained a data set that is up to date until January of 2022, where the previous one was up to date until May 2019. And as the publication rates are going up so much, this means a lot more data for us. So with the passing of time, we also have much more data to perform our experiments with. Another thing, so with a bigger amount of data, we can, and the passing of time, we can start to experiment with new split points, such as 2020 or 2021 even. And another thing we can take into account with this is the starting point. So for the current experiments, we used all of the data going back to about 1911, though there are not many very old cases. There are some old cases that might not be relevant for new case law anymore. And we can find out the effect of cutting away all of these newer cases. We wish to look into the separate part of the judgment, which we did not do. We just fed the algorithm the entire text of the decision itself. But we can determine the most important, maybe determine the most important parts, like maybe the facts or the decision itself. The structure of these files vary a lot though, so we'll have to come up with a trustworthy way to split the files. We have only used very general word embeddings up to this point that were trained on Wikipedia data. And maybe we can try a set of legal word embeddings that are specifically meant for legal data, which may give us better results as well. And finally, we will also be looking into different algorithms, as we've only used 2 very basic algorithms so far, and they may be more suitable, especially for the regression experiments. So that is what I have to tell you now. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions or suggestions, as it is still a work in progress, you can email me or tell me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Is there any questions? Are there any questions from the audience, online or offline? Very interesting presentation. Yes.
I actually have a couple of questions, so stop me whenever someone else has one. My first question was around the influence of your balancing. You said you lost quite a few decisions. It struck me as a lot. I get it, it's easier with balanced data sets, but there would be other solutions to deal with the imbalance. So can you say again, maybe how many how much of the actual information you were losing through these steps? Because there were a couple of steps narrowing it down, I think, from time and then to balancing and all of it. I'm curious whether there might be actually more signal in the data that you're currently disregarding.
Yes. Wait, I'm trying to go back to Zoom, sorry. Especially in the courts of first instance data sets, we have lost a lot of data because there are many more cases for the courts of first instance that are not cited. So I think for the courts of first instance 2017 set, there were originally about 48,000 uncited cases and about 5,000 cited cases. Sorry, my Zoom is acting up.
No problem. And then I have a follow-up that was, I think you took the references, if I understood you correctly, from the government provided XML. It seems that they tell you whether there are references. And I'm just curious on what happens if you, I don't know, mine yourself with some simple regular expressions. I would be curious to see maybe or to get a feeling for how accurate these references are that they do. Because I could imagine, I mean, governments being governments, that they miss many or something.
Yeah, so this is a separate quite sophisticated algorithm that is being used by sort of an external or internal instance within the government. So there is a paper on this linked in the presentation, which is from Opine in 2015. So it is more accurate than a few regular expressions. We could try to do this ourselves. But as this was initially a master's thesis, we did not have the time or means to do this, but this could be something to look into in the future, definitely.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you happen to have a breakdown of your confusion matrix for the different levels of chords that you've selected instead of aggregating them together? So that will allow us to determine how accurate your model is when comparing different tiers of chords.
Wait, so, oh, yes, I found it. So your question is what the confusion matrices look like, if I understood?
For different tiers, yeah.
Yes, they are quite, how you say, the same across labels. So for the binary experiment, the 0 and 1 label, they are both the false positives and false negatives. They are quite symmetrical. So one of them was even entirely symmetrical. So exactly the same amount of true positives and true negatives, and the same amount of false positives and false negatives, which was true for all of the binary experiments.
Don't you find that surprising? Because I would have thought that the higher level chords, the appellate chords, tend to get published more than the lower chords.
Yes, yes and no, because I did not have real expectations for this. But it was surprising to see that they were so close together and that the algorithm was apparently just as good as getting the zeros, the unsighted cases as the non-sighted cases.
Thank you.
May I ask something? So for the evaluation, the test set that you used, right? Was it also a balanced evaluation set, or did you have the test set actually be left in the original data distribution from before you balanced it?
All of the sets were balanced yeah.
Right, and I guess the reason I'm asking this is because the data that you get from the real world is going to be imbalanced, right? So if you wanted to use this system that you've quite happily developed to predict real world cases, would it be better to have to evaluate it on a kind of more real world distribution rather than one that has been balanced?
I agree. I feel like it would be, especially to compare the two and see if the scores are close together. Because if they were, that would be very nice. Because then it would be that would be a step in a direction of a realistic implementation. So that would be a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any comments? You mentioned you have many questions.
Yeah, two more. One, because I maybe missed it. I know you said something about the cost parameter exploration, but I couldn't. At least I can't remember whether there was any meaningful change when you changed the C parameter for the SVM. Because I think you said something about you tried a couple of different, but did that make any difference?
It made a small difference. So for the experiments, we very crudely chose just the best accuracy, but I think the improvement in accuracy was not more than 3%, but still improvement.
Okay. I got it. And then my last question comes back to the very start of what you described. That is, and you said something about that already towards the end, where you said you'll try different algorithms and methods for the regression, which I personally find the other one much more intriguing, because I can't really bring myself to believe that you could predict the correct number of citations. I just think it's a very difficult task. And when you imply SVMs, you said it's like that's not SOTA, right? That is a somewhat approach that, well, we know for other languages at least, there are better solutions to this. So I wonder, you did this for a reason, probably. And I was curious, is this the best that's available for Dutch? Is there an issue around there? Or what made you choose or go with SVMs for that first exploration?
So we chose the SVM initially because a linear SVM is what we used, is quite popular and has been proven quite effective in other legal prediction tasks. And as there has been no work on the specific problem, we chose to first set a baseline with an SVM.